Welcome to The Growing Band Director, the podcast that dives into topics applying to all of us band directors. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague, Jeff Smith. Together, we discuss many aspects of a school band program, including how to build your concert, jazz, and marching programs, as well as everything else we do as band directors. More importantly, we'll discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you rot." Let's get started. So I was meeting with a student after school today, Jeff, to work on snare drum stuff for the parade. I think you know who she is. She played bass drum for us in the past, and she's marching snare now, and she's an 8th grader. And because our middle school isn't able to march in the parade this year, because we're still coming back from COVID and the skill level and all that, she wanted to march for the high school. So I gave her the snare music, and there's the 16 bar cadence, which is the trickiest part, and then the piece that we have to learn that backs up the band. So I set up a lesson. I got over there at 2:45. I just got back from here, and she's wicked bright, as you know, right? And I came in thinking I was going to have to do all these things, and she had the music printed out, which was great. And I said, "Have you had a chance to look at it?" And she's like, I've memorized the very beginning. And by that, she then proceeded to play the entire 16 bar cadence, which a lot of kids at high school need a hard time to learn, let alone memorize. And she played it all for me perfectly. And I was like, okay, well, that's the hard part. And then she just did it. And I was like, okay, so now here's how the cadence goes into the song with the tap off and then the tap back and all that. But she just floored me.
Yeah. Well, she's an example of a great motivated child. She didn't have a cell phone at band camp, and she was because we were using UDB for coordinates, and she learned all her dots. And I'd sit there and say, "Well, how do you remember them?" She said, "Well, they're up here." And she was so motivated that I don't think we ever corrected her on a dot or how to get there or how to move away from it. She just came out of nowhere, and she was just a charm. And that shows how motivation can just bring a kid all the way through to where you want them to be. And look at this, she's in middle school and she's still beyond motivated, which is excellent.
Yeah, it's crazy because so often we have students who are, less than motivated, and that can really drag us down. But then when you come across a kid like that, they're really a pleasure to teach and all that. And so I just wanted to share that story.
Yeah, and we as directors have a job of trying to take those that are less than motivated and make them motivated in any way, shape, or form we can find.
And then also try to motivate those kids who are already motivated at the high level.
Right. It's a paradox of levels. You've got the highly motivated that if you wink at them, they're going to do it right. And you got the other child that you're just trying to drag along to get them motivated. And then you got the median kid, and you have to keep everybody involved and everybody participating all the time and walking away from any rehearsal saying, "I got something out of that. I learned something today. I did something better today. I've improved myself."
Yeah. And we call that the bell curve, right? Teaching to them. I was taught teaching to the middle 80%. And I assume most people have heard of this, but you have your top 10% that you can't screw up. They're just going to be great. And then the bottom 10% that no matter how good you are, they're going to struggle. And if you teach everything to that middle 80% the best you can, while helping all the other kids at the same time, then that's when you can have a program that sustains and thrives.
And that's where you're sort of lucky, because with the people you have on staff, when we get out there, for the children that are having difficulty, severe difficulty, you're able to say, "Okay, would you go take care of so-and-so and help so-and-so through this," to bring them up as high as they can go. And some of your kids I've been totally impressed with, that they've come from where you weren't sure they were going to make it through the band camp. And by their 4th year in high school, they're just charging through, doing a great job.
Yeah. So motivating teenagers is a thing, right? Being inspired, inspiring them. And it's really, really tricky because some days it's hard. But being able to read the teenager, whatever level you end up teaching, whether it be elementary school or middle school or high school, knowing the kids really well and knowing what makes them tick. I say some things in rehearsal that I feel like if people came and watched me who weren't experienced teachers, they'd think I was dumb. I think I was silly, right? But you really have to bring yourself to whatever the level of the kid is and then so they can you can approach them, and then you continue to help them grow and motivate them. And I think those teachers who can motivate students who are all state levels or all national levels, but then also motivate the kids who are brand new all at the same time, that's a real gift.
Yes, and the collective body is the most, trying to bring it together into one unified group that can move forward is really a talent and a skill that takes a lot of nurturing to get them there.
So
because we're very different from an athletic team where the coach will say, okay, well, this is the first string, this is the second string, the third string. Our string goes from 1 to 1,000,000, and whatever, all the strings participate. They don't sit on the sideline and do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the ways I find to motivate kids is I have all these great quotes that are in my band room. And I know most band directors have that, but my biggest inspiration as a teacher has been John Wooden. And people who have not heard of John Wooden really should check him out. He passed away, I probably should have looked this up, about 10 years ago, and he was almost 100 at the time. I don't think he's coached anything since the early 70s.
1975.
1975. Okay. But so for those people who don't know John Wooden, he was was an English teacher and grew up in the Midwest, I believe. But was famous for being the coach of the UCLA Bruins. And they won all the national championships and are still widely considered maybe the best college sports program ever. And he's this very meek looking and sounding person who is just very God-fearing and just worked really hard and believed in getting the details right and all that. And he has written many books. A lot of his his students have gone on to do great things in all the world, not just in basketball, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton were two of the most famous players that he was able to teach. And they always spoke his praises. And there's a book out there by Steve Jameson, I believe, and by him, I forget exactly if they co-wrote, but it's just titled Wooden, his last name, Wooden. And that is the best thing. I've given it to drum majors or potential student teachers or other teachers. That's the easiest read ever because it's not a thing about music, but it's all about just leading other people and being the best human you can and the best leader you can. So I took all these quotes that I love from that book, put them up, one quote per page, and I just mix them around and put them in different places in the band room and move them and all that. And if it affects a kid, then that's worth it to me. The great thing about it is I did put these in the show links. If you check out the website or click on the links below, you should be able to click these so you can take these and print them off and use them in your band room as well, already formatted for 8.5 by 11. And then the links are also the quotes we're going to talk about today are also in just a document as one-liners as well. So to me, I check out one a day and it helps me. It's the gift that keeps on giving, as our friend Mr. Lizotte would say. So we've got a ton of these quotes. I'm not sure how many we're going to get to or not, but to me, they're amazing. We ready to dive in, Jeff?
Well, since I was teaching in 1975, a lot of the quotes that I got from my kids came from George Parks and Tommy Hannum at University of Massachusetts, and when they were also in drum corps during the Red and Buccaneers and stuff like that. And I'd hear them say these quotes, and we used to chant them in the evenings at the end of rehearsals, so the kids would remember them and make them part of their lives for whatever they do. And to this day, I have some older kids that'll write me back. You remember this one? I said, I remember that one.
Yeah.
And they're not music teachers, they're just great people, learned good things and moved forward with them.
Yeah. Because I believe one of these quotes, it's going to be in here, but everybody has potential for greatness. It's the leader's job to help that person reach it. And their greatness is not going to necessarily be as a musician, but greatness as a person, and music is just our vehicle to do that. So, Jeff, you're a great example of the first one here. I've always tried, anybody I get to work with, I try to find the best person I can find, period. And many times I've had people who I feel are overqualified for their position. But the first quote goes like this: surround yourself with people strong enough to change your mind. I love that one. People who can change your mind. So surround yourself with people strong enough to change your mind.
Well, I got to tell you that's true. When I was in college back in the 60s and 70s, we were taught that marching band and drum corps were evil and they weren't good things to do and they would destroy kids. But I let people that I knew, like Ray Fallon, teach me that it's not evil, it's the way you teach it. And keeping your mind open. And I was fortunate, I was able to get a lot of people that changed my mind about a lot of things. And to this day, still change my mind on a lot of different subject matters as it pertains to our business and what we do as teachers, because you've always got to stay open. There's no closed book on it. That's a great quote.
So the next one, never assume you're as good as you can be. That ties right into it, right? Never assume you're as good as you can be. After that, we have explanation, demonstration, imitation, repetition. This one doesn't seem inspirational, but it really gives us a manual for how to give better lessons and help teachers again and help students. So again, explanation, demonstration, imitation, repetition, right? So you explain something, you demonstrate it, they copy you, and this could be musically or as character, right? And then you just repeat it. And we always forget about that repetition sometimes over and over and over again.
Yeah, a good one that goes along with that one also is failure is only an opportunity to begin again, only this time more wisely.
Say it again.
Failure is only an opportunity to begin again, only this time more wisely. How many times have we taught a child and they just aren't getting it? They just aren't getting it. We keep going over, they aren't getting it. And then you come back to it the next week and they got a little bit of it. And we keep working with them. I can remember having students that when they were in 6th and 7th grade, I wasn't sure they'd continue playing. And now they're out playing professionally. And it was only because we just kept saying, okay, well, you did this wrong. This is how to fix it. You did this wrong. This is how you fix it. And they learned by their mistakes, from their mistakes, how to move themselves forward.
Success breeds satisfaction. And this one's a huge one for those people who are working to build their programs or have built a strong program and want to stay there. Success breeds satisfaction. Satisfaction breeds failure. So don't get, we're not getting satisfied just because you're happy that you're succeeding, whatever your definition of success is. Don't be satisfied. The minute you're satisfied with what you have, you're on the downslope.
Yeah, too many people get so happy that they've won a trophy or they've gotten 5 stars, and then they come the next year and they don't keep building and they feel like they failed. It was just because they didn't recognize the fact that they needed to keep seeking that satisfaction, even if they had been successful 1 year. 1 year is just 1 year. It's in the books. It's done. You're moving on.
Identify and remove excuses for not getting to the next level. I'll say it again. Identify and remove excuses for not getting to the next level. That's a great one.
Yeah. That's one that I put along with. You've got what it takes, but it takes all what you've got to get there. And great quote.
Stop saying no and start asking how. Sometimes I want to say no, though. Sometimes it's a no.
I tend to use that word a lot, as your band knows. But, I think the start asking how is outstanding, but also start asking why.
Yeah.
Some people, as a young band director, I'd say no. My wife would come to concerts and she'd say to me, "Why don't you do it this way?" And my excuse was, "No, that's not the way band is done." And she'd keep asking me, and she made me sit back, why and how. And I can't say I thank her enough on so many different fronts on how she changed me as a teacher, because she made me not go by what the textbook said in 1975, but how and why to do things, and to say, well, there are other ways to do things. You can't just always do it one way. A textbook doesn't mean it's the only way or necessarily the right way. And that's a fantastic quote.
And always listen to your wife.
Oh, yes, that is a valid point. Yes.
To improve,
who listen to their wives are band directors who are happy band directors and move forward.
Yes. To improve, you must be uncomfortable being comfortable and discontent with being content, right? Being uncomfortable, being comfortable. That's a great one. Love it. The next one is my favorite John Wooden quote. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So here's a story with John Wooden. He would prepare he'd take these 3x5 note cards and he would prepare every practice well ahead of time. And it was down to the minute, right? If it was from 2 to 3:45, 2 to 2:03 was this, and 2:03 to 2:09 was this, and just all the way through. And he kept those all the way through. So you can see these just decades and decades of these notes. He'd go back and review them and change them and all that. But this preparing thing, back to the small details. And there's another one coming up here that talks about details. But what they would do is they'd win a national championship. They'd blow out, in the championship, they'd win, they'd be undefeated. 3 months later, they'd come back for their first practice. Jeff, the first thing he would do is teach them how to put on their socks. Because what happened was, some people would say, well, wait a minute, these are great All-American players. They just won an NCAA championship. Why are we doing that? Well, he would find that if he didn't do it, people coming in would put on their socks incorrectly. They just throw them on, and then they would get bunched up and they'd get blisters. So he would teach them to put it on from the toe forward, stretch it back, pull it all the way up, and then roll it down. That's how they did it at the time. But he would, and that was just a symbol of everything he did, right? Just preparing in every single way to make sure that he took care of the details.
I'm going to build upon what you just said. When I was teaching in Connecticut, a group of my friends and I we were at a Connecticut Music Educators Association conference, and that evening we had it off. So we went up to UConn to watch the UConn women practice with Gino Remian. And Gino was there doing practice, pardon me. And he kept doing 5 plays over and over again. And he said, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. And he'd say that to them over and over again. And so we watched this practice. And then the next day, we all watched the game. We went out and we watched the game. And we're looking at the game and we're saying, that's the play he was practicing. And he'd take that same play, practice it over and over again. So every member of that team knew it. And they knew it in all the different amalgamations of how that same play was being done with just a different person in the pick point to straighten it out. And it was really a well-teaching thing that you don't practice to get it right. You practice so you don't get it wrong.
Well, what's funny too, because there's another side to that. Somebody could hear that and say, okay, well, I'm going to run the same piece over and over and over and over again and do too much repetition. And then they're not going to, do as much music or rely on other things, right? So there's definitely a time and a place for all of this, right? Having the sense and knowing your kids. The next two, I believe, go into, especially with students who maybe have lesser parts or students who are maybe struggling a little bit more. One of them is very simple. It says each job counts. Doesn't matter what it is. Somebody could think of, well, turning on the light to the band room is not an important job. Well, if you don't turn on the light, you're going to have a hard time doing anything. The person at midnight when you're sleeping who's washing your bathroom floor in school, right? If they don't do it, that's going to get, those are considered very nominal, easy things. So each job counts. And then believe in the hidden potential of all. Believe in the hidden potential of all. There's people who are easy to believe in, like this girl we were talking about earlier. But what about the kid who's really struggling? Find that hidden potential.
Well, I think also if you take third clarinet, last chair. Sometimes they get a little dejected because they don't think they're getting the recognition. And for me, I talk about that. That's like the foundation. If the foundation isn't strong, the tree can't grow. And that third clarinet player has to be just as strong as the first clarinet player, second clarinet player, solo clarinet player, third trumpet, solo trumpet, because we all build up from the bottom. Without a strong bottom, we don't have a good top.
I'm going to urge people again to go onto the website and download the PDF of either the ones to put in their band room or just the list. Take it out and have it to look at. Obviously, this is not our list, but you're not going to remember all of these. You want to have these written down, print them out, take them out, have them, put them in your band room somewhere, put them on your mirror every day when you wake up. These are just great life quotes. Personal greatness is not determined by the size of the job, but by the size of the effort one puts into the work. Personal greatness is not determined by the size of the job, but by the size of the effort you put into. But that was a good one.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Next one we've done already. Personal greatness is measured against one's own potential. So John Wooden would frequently say, the player I was most proud of, or my best player, was not the star player. It's the person who had a lower potential, right? But they reached all of it. They did everything that they could.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick example of that. I had a special needs student who joined my band, and he was a clarinet player, had a lot of troubles. And it just turned out in the drill that he was in a crucial spot in the drill where both sides of the band hinged on him. And I ran into the stands at this one competition or festival, whatever it was, and I happened to stand next to his mother, and his mother said, "Do you know where so-and-so is?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you?" She said, "No, but I hear he's right. He makes everything work." And I said, "Well, here it comes." And I looked at her and I said, "Where is he?" She said, "I don't know. They all got the same uniform on." I said, "Because we all work to be one instead of individuals." And he went on, finished high school, switched over to tuba, marched in the Boston Crusaders, marched in the Hawthorne Caballeros, marched in the Bridgemen, and went on, learned to drive, became a physical therapist, and he showed that he could be great. But when he started, his needs were very, very huge.
In a past podcast, we talked about good concert band rehearsals, and one of the big things you can tell is when the conductor stops, do people stop with them, and do they start with them? So that one leads us in, that sort of thought leads us into our next one, with the next two, which really go together, or the next three. Sloppiness breeds sloppiness, right? So that's from little things. Sloppiness breeds sloppiness. Little things make big things happen, right? So all the little things that you do, you combine them up and they make a big thing. And last thing that he had to say on that was, think small, work hard, and get good. It's really that easy. So for everybody who's looking to build a program or become better teachers, just think about what you can do, the small stuff, work really hard at that, and that will help you and your program get good. The next one, I've already had my favorite, but that was my second favorite. This is my absolute favorite. The star of the team is the team. And that was a really big deal when he was trying to recruit these great players. You know, I remember he had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was Lou Alcindor at the time, and brought him in and basically said, look, you'll have an opportunity to compete. You're going to be here. You're not special. You're not different from anybody else. And that was one of the reasons why some of those players wanted to go there, because they knew that the star of the team was the team and it was not them.
A similar quote I used to use was, "There's no I in team. And the band is only about me and us." And that helped us.
Character starts with the little things. So here's a test. Next time you're walking down the hallway and there's a piece of trash on the ground, do we pick it up? Right? Character is more than honesty. It's a pretty short one. Okay, another one of my favorites. Earn the respect of everyone, especially yourself. So if you can look yourself in the mirror and know you're doing everything you can in your job and in your life, then be happy with that. It's harder to do than it is to say. Earn the respect of everyone, especially yourself. I'm going to skip the next one, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Never mistake activity for achievement. Jeff, do you have any examples of band directors who might be very active but not very achieving very, very many things?
Sure. I met many directors when I've been judging and say, well, we practice every day. We work really hard at this and we do it over and over and over and over and over again, but you never give us a better score or you never give us a better evaluation. And my comment back is that just because you do it over and over again and do a lot of activity doesn't mean you accomplish the goal. You need to step back and go to that quote you previously had about the small stuff and fix the small stuff so that the big things will learn to flourish around them. And that's a great one, because I think you constantly hear people saying that, well, I work so hard at this. And the first thing that I get upset is when they say, I work so hard at this. If they said, we work so hard at this, then I'd say, fine. And then my comment would be, well, how do all of you work at it? Because if you as a group are working hard at it and it's not achieving, then it has to be the mechanism or the manner in which you're working at the subject matter.
This next one was up on our bathroom wall. And this is a trick we can do. We have a bathroom in our band room. And if you have access to the bathroom, if you put a quote on the inside of the door, every time the kids are using the bathroom, they look up and they see the quote and they remember it more that way. So this is one of my favorite ones. I think it's up there right now, to be honest with you. Be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what other people think you are. So be more concerned with your character than your reputation. These are great teaching lessons for kids as well. That's why we like to have them posted.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Be prepared and be honest, right? Do your best to prepare and then be honest afterwards. It's a great one. The next one I use with our percussionists all the time, because especially at concert time, when you want them to, you want to keep the concert moving and the kids have to move 1,000 things and move between 1,000 things. It's quick and easy. It says, be quick, but don't hurry. Right. And if you can like get more out of every single day, because we all have the same 24 hours, but from the time you're at school, if you can quickly do as much as possible, right, then your program will be better over the many years. But don't hurry, because there's another one of these. We're not on it yet, but it leads right into it. It says, if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it over? Right. So be quick, but don't hurry, because if you hurry, you're going to have to do it over, and then you have to take more time to do that. So finding that balance between doing quick and being hurry. And I find that students relate to that pretty well.
And how many of our colleagues, when we go to festivals or we go to our MEA conventions, talk about, well, I never have time to get this done or that done. If they would just think about that quote, that possibly would help them realize that maybe I need to back off a little bit so I can get it done. And it relates back to our conversation with Trey a couple sessions ago about the selection of good repertoire, or with Randall about picking good repertoire where we could spend more time working with the repertoire rather than teaching nuts and bolts.
Yep. This one is a really good character one. You can't let praise or criticism get to you. It's a weakness to get caught up in either one. And a lot of us have had bands that sound really good, and then people you get praised for that, and that's great. And you always say thank you, but you can't get caught up in that. Again, we talk about being complacent. You can't live a perfect.
The other part of that one too is the criticism one. You can't let that get over you, because the criticism, when people talk about what you're doing, sometimes is a message to tell you what you could step back and think about that you need to work on, rather than it being a criticism of you personally. It's just a subject matter that maybe you have not thought about as a teacher.
And that's so funny, because there's a quote that's not even on here today, but I use it all the time, and I have to remind myself of it all the time. So you just said, if you get criticized, it's to help, right? Well, I forget exactly how you worded it. When they're criticizing, you're trying to help, right? And some people get upset about that. I have to remind myself, simple word, it's not about me, right? So if your band's doing whatever and you're having a hard time and somebody criticizes something, take it. It's not about you. That's why you tell the kid, it's not about you. It's about the team.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a principal that was like that. He put me in the office. He said, listen, before we start this discussion, this is not about you. This is about things that need to be done. And he always prefaced his conversations that way. And he was a great principal.
I'm going to use that. You can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. That's I think a huge reason why it feels so good some days to be a teacher, right? Because everything you do for these kids, they're not going to be able to repay you, and that's the point. To live a perfect day doing something where they can't repay you for it.
Yep, you're right. And sometimes that repayment doesn't come while they're your student, but it may come a decade later, and it pays back twofold.
What you are this is John Wooden for sure. What you are as a person is far more important than what you are as a musician. I think he said as an athlete, and I think I changed it to musician. But what you are as a person is far more important than what you are as a musician. And if that's up there and the kids see that, even if you never speak the words, but if that's in your band room, kids will see that. And then you treat them with respect and you teach the whole person, not just them as a musician. Again, that's how you get the vibe and the culture really, really happening.
Yep. Sometimes that's why we pick drum majors.
Mhm.
because they're such a good person, and their aura of being a good person just spreads over the whole group, so that you get all the kids to just be really great people.
That
And
doesn't mean that anybody who's listening to this who has auditioned for drum major for me in the past and did not get it, that doesn't mean you weren't a good person.
I
Some
didn't
of
mean to
them were
bring,
not, but
I didn't bring it up in that vein. So I apologize to all our friends out there that may listen to it. It doesn't have to do anything with that. I'm just thinking back of drum majors that I went to a funeral this week for one of my drum majors in 1986, and his mother passed away, and we hadn't seen each other in 30 years. And all we did is we stood and talked. He introduced me to his wife, his 3 adult children, and we talked about his life and what he had done through his life, and how grateful he was for all the things we, as a collective family, the band, did for him as a person. And he just had that aura that spread over the group, and it lasted for almost 15 years.
there's a quote here that you could tell John Wooden knew about because they won over and over and over again. They were this perennial powerhouse, right? Winning takes talent. And I guess for us, that would be having a great music program or having really good musicians or having a really good band takes talent, right? The kids have to be able to do it. You have to be able to teach it, right? Winning takes talent, but to repeat takes character. You know, you can win or succeed one year, but if you get caught up in that and you don't have the character to know what's really important, it's going to be a one hit. How many programs have we seen either have a great band one year or basketball teams who have a great team one year and then the next year they're terrible again, right? They have that insane success.
May I add one word to that quote? Not only does it take character, it takes patience. Too many people are impatient to be successful, and you just got to be patient. You got to judge your children to see how it brings them forward.
Do little things well, get good, be patient. Yeah. We've already done the next one, so I'll skip that one. If you don't have time to do it right, then when you're going to have time to do it over. I love that. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. I'm positive that a doer makes mistakes.
Most definitely.
It isn't what you do, but how you do it. Good one. I don't understand this next one. Ability is a poor man's wealth. I don't understand that one. I probably should.
Well, I'd have to know in context what he was talking about at that time.
All right. This next one definitely applies to band for sure. Failure is not fatal, but failure to change might be. So your band goes out, they're terrible. You do a piece, a concert, it flops. Or something goes bad, you try to start a group and it doesn't stop. It doesn't start, right? That failure is not fatal to your program. But if you don't find a way to change and improve it in the future, it will be.
And I think everybody as a band director needs to realize that there will be times within your life where there will be some failures, and you can't let it demoralize you. You just have to let it reinvigorate you to move forward, to try to figure out what went wrong, why it happened, and what you could have done or what could have been done to make it move forward for the future.
When John Wooden writes about failure, he talks a lot about Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln, as we all know, was one of the great Americans and what he's done for our country. But he ran for office 20 different times, starting at the local level and then gradually going up through, state and the president. And turns out of the 20 races he ran, he lost 16 out of 20 times. So he would run an average of 4 times. And then the 5th time he would win. And then he would lose another 4 times on the next level and then win the next one. And he ended up just keep trying. So I use that analogy a lot with students. Failure is not fatal. Keep going, fail forward, fail upward. Just keep going for it.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
I'd always ask kids, okay, didn't succeed this time. What did you do that prevented you from doing that? What prevented you from being successful? And how can we fix that for you?
Don't measure yourself by what you have accomplished. but why by what you should have accomplished with your ability. Don't measure yourself by what you've accomplished, but by what you should have accomplished by your ability. So that could be a negative one or a positive one, depending on your ability.
And I also think when you get near the twilight of your career, you look back at the things you wanted to do, and you have to think, was it because of finances? Was it because of personnel? Was it because of yourself? Was it because of educational attitudes at the time? And you just got to look back and think about that. That's a good quote.
Not important who starts the game, but who finishes the game. That I think that was in the context of, you're not a starter, but it doesn't matter. If you're not a starter, you're still just as important. And in basketball, you're going to be there when the game finishes. It doesn't matter who wins the first quarter. It matters who wins the fourth quarter.
Yep.
This next one is great because, Jeff, I think we all leave college knowing it all, right? We leave college and we're like, yep, I'm ready. Here I go. We're going to rock, right? And so this one says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
The life of hard knocks, if you learn from your hard knocks, teaches more than the life of success all the time.
It's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. For example, when you ask kids to use pencils, do they have the pencils? Do you take the time to make sure they have a pencil? Do you have a bucket with the pencils? Are the pencils sharpened? Are there enough pencils in there? Remind me, I need to go to Walmart and get more pencils. Do you ask them to use pencils every single day in rehearsal, right? When they write it, do they actually write it so they can read it, right? The little things are vital. The little details are vital. Little things make big things happen, right? 1 pound, Jeff, you could probably hold 1 pound just fine, right? No problem. Maybe even 10 pounds. But as we add pound after pound, at some point, you're going to have to put that weight down, whatever that pound is. Right. So just think of whatever you're trying to accomplish as 1 little pound at a time.
The simple little thing of sitting properly in rehearsal, having the pencil in rehearsal, where your instrument is at rest position, where your instrument is as playing position, are just like talking about John Wooden, about how to put the socks on that you talked about earlier. Those little things build to make the big thing. But if you don't do the little things, the big things aren't going to occur.
Do your kids know like where to put the chair away and how to put the chair away? Do they know, how to take it out? Do they know where everything goes? Like all that little stuff, the details. Talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. And conceit is self-given. Be careful. So I'll say it again. Talent is God-given. So be humble. If you're good at something, you didn't get it yourself. You were given that by God. So be humble. Fame is man-given, so be grateful for that. Conceit is self-given. Be careful.
How often do we see that?
Yeah. The main ingredient of stardom is the rest of the team. Because it's so counterintuitive. The main ingredient of stardom is the rest of the team.
I go back to the previous one. You said talent is God-given, the whole quote there. Last night, I had the great fortune to go hear Arturo Sandoval play in Portsmouth. And the first thing he did was thank Dizzy Gillespie for mentoring him and bringing him on. And then he talked about his parents when he lived in Cuba, where he played trumpet, and then he taught himself to learn piano. And his family said, well, why are you wasting your time doing this? He said, because I can do it. And then he gets to the U.S. and Dizzy takes him under his arm and just pulls him through. It was the humility of the man, the talent of the man, and the character of the man was just outstanding.
Yeah, what's funny is I've heard that story. I don't know if you've heard this, Jeff, or not. You probably have, but Arturo Sandoval was a cab driver in Cuba, and Dizzy came down to play, and he was his cab driver. I don't know if that was on purpose. I'm sure he purposely got Dizzy or whatever. So then he like kind of is bringing him around, and then supposedly he brings him to the gig, and then comes in to the rehearsal and is like sitting there and just hanging out. And then there's a break, and they all kind of go out to have a smoke or whatever, and all of a sudden they look over, and Dizzy's like, "Who's playing the trumpet? They're amazing." And then looked over, and it's like, "My cab player is playing the trumpet. Wow, my cabbie can actually play the trumpet." And so he goes over, and apparently he played with him. Like he's like, "All right, come on the gig, play," and that was his big break. He just was the cab driver for Dizzy. And then Dizzy was humble and honest enough to see what the talent this cab driver had. And you're right, he brought him to America, and he sort of gave him the opportunity. And some of those early recordings from the early 90s, I think it was, with Arturo, if you guys haven't seen young Arturo, it's like just ridiculous trumpet.
Yep. And even at 72, when I saw him last night, when he was playing, he was just ripping those parts out like crazy. But I'd never heard that part of the story, how Dizzy found him. But that's inspiring.
Success comes from knowing that you did your best to become the best that you're capable of becoming. That's one of those John quotes, because he's an English teacher and loved poetry. Success comes from knowing that you did your best to become the best you are could be capable of becoming. Success is never final. Failure is never fatal. It's the courage that counts.
Yeah.
There's another one we didn't write down, but I don't know how I missed it. It's one of my favorite ones. It's because it's handwritten. That's why I wrote it out somewhere. How does it go? I'm not what I want to be, not what I should be, not what I ought to be, but I'm thankful every day that I'm better than I used to be.
Yeah, and one I used to use was push yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. And did that one. Practice the way you're going to perform. Too often we hear, I know I heard this in undergraduate school, kid would have recital and they'd say, "Well, I got to take the day off. I got to rest for my performance." And we'd always say to them, "Well, how does this interfere with your performance? If you've practiced the way you're going to perform, that's the way you're going to perform." And focus on the outcome, not the obstacles.
That's right, because the great leaders and great people who achieve things are mission driven.
Right.
They're about finding the solution. We're going to do that, whatever that is. And the stuff gets in the way. Yep, we'll find a way around that and we'll do it. Don't let those fences stop you from what that mission is going to be.
Then always remember where you are from.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these great musicians, such as Arturo, came from very humble beginnings, and but they always talk about where they came from to honor their parents or what have helped them to start them on their journey through the world of music. And then one that I love is, a band is not proud because it performs well. It performs well because it is proud.
And what are they proud in? What are they proud of?
Yep. And that could be a lot of different things. It depends on how they've been trained and what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Are there any other quotes that you wanted to add to here, or anything that we didn't talk about? That's a lot of quotes.
Well, the thing that I always used to try to hammer into my kids: respect, responsibility, and self-discipline. And I used to say to them, if you can do those three things, no matter what it is, you will move forward in your life in one way, shape, or form or another.
You know what I've learned a lot from? I mean, if people have a local karate studio or jukadu studio or jujitsu, like any one of these martial arts studios, if you can sit down and have coffee with the person who runs that, right? A lot of us have had students who are in the martial arts. Like, you can learn a lot by just seeing how they teach. Like, some of the things they talk about, like never make excuses, do your best, try your best, say yes. Like, all these simple things are things that apply to everything. So that's sort of an untapped thing. We have one here local in Westbrook, and I've only started seeing it because my son has started doing it. So and I sit there and I'm like, wow, I should use that. 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 They're a great source of motivation if you can find any way to see people who are martial arts teachers. Oof.
The other thing that coincides with that is that if you have kids that are in a strong scouting troop or Girl Scout troop, some of the the character building techniques that are used in scouts are fantastic. Like scout motto, be prepared. No discussion, be prepared. And your quote up top had your was be prepared and honest, I think it was.
Be prepared and be honest.
And be honest. And scouting talks about being honest. Those things can help a band director, and hopefully some of our band directors have experienced the martial arts or they've experienced scouting so they can carry that with them. But I'll tell you another simple thing that some of your listeners are going to say that I'm totally nuts, but I used to train dogs in obedience, and you always use kindness and repetition and correct verbiage with limited amounts of talking and getting the point across. If you take the time to train your dog to sit, stay, and come, you'll find that many of those characters that you have to imbibe in yourself to do it would make your teaching so much easier. Because they can't communicate back to you. You don't know what they're thinking. And sometimes you got to think about that when you're communicating to the kids. You don't really know if you've really made a connection there, and you've got to see or find ways to see how they've made the connection. All different other things in life connect to what we do as music teachers.
Again, I would highly suggest, there's, 50 quotes here. Everybody, go onto the PDF, print them out. If you can't find them, send me an email. If you have show suggestion ideas, please send them our way. We've got a ton lined up for you guys. But please use these quotes. Check out Wooden, the book. Wooden, I think it's $10. You can get it used on Amazon for probably way less than that. It's a quick read. I mean, I don't like to read, to be honest with you, for pleasure. And it's such a great read. So check out that book. We do have some more episodes coming up that are going to be centered around programming. I'm looking forward soon to giving you guys a programming episode based all on grade 3. What I've done is taken about 25 of my favorite grade 3 pieces that I've ever done with kids that I know work in certain circumstances. I've done the research, and I'm going to do a solo podcast just sharing recordings from these in snippets. And before we hear each one, telling you a little bit about the piece, what you need, how it works, how it doesn't work, and all that. And I'm hoping you guys are going to be looking forward to that, because these are 25 of my favorite pieces. We're going to do the same thing at the grade 3 level and the same thing at the grade 4 level. Also hoping to do one about marches only, one only about Christmas tunes or other holiday tunes. So we're going to have a lot coming up about programming. Again, please reach out to the show, the Growing Band Director, anywhere that you can. And we're going to take your suggestions and go from there. Thank you for listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, if you have the time, we highly recommend the After Sectionals podcast for more great listening. Thank you for listening to the Growing Band Director. See you next week.